Good afternoon, everyone, and I guess good morning for everyone in the Seattle regional office out in the Pacific and Alaska. My name is Dan Ripke. I'm the Executive Director of the Educational Association of University Centers. On behalf of EAUC, as well as our representatives from the Economic Development Administration, we'd like to welcome everyone to this, our second call now. We have a pretty packed agenda, so I won't spend too much time in the introduction. To take back control. Very quickly, we have like I said, a packed agenda. I will do some welcome and introductions. First of all, we have Larry Molnar, who is our president of EAUC, who is joining us this month, as well as, and he will be giving some remarks later. We have Bernadette Grafton, who is the program analyst for the EDA University Center program. And then we have a special guest who will be speaking later on this morning, Roberto Gardo. So very quickly, I wanted to go over some quick updates. We have a meeting coming up this Sunday for those of you who are going to be at the UEDA University Economic Development Conference, which is in Reno this year. Bernadette, myself, and a handful of others will be meeting on Sunday at lunch at the conference center. We will be emailing out the details of that, as well as we're trying to arrange for a conference call capability for those people who would like to dial into that. That will be a roughly 60 to 90 minute conversation about the EAUC and the EDA University Center program. And then something that Larry may go into a little more detail later is we are in the planning mode right now for our EAUC Spring Conference in Washington, D.C. That event is usually held in late March to early April. We're just trying to see if we can combine it with some of the other EDA or economic development events that occur in Washington, D.C. each year. So with that, let me turn it over to Larry Molnar, the president of EAUC.
Okay, well, thank you, Dan. As Dan mentioned, I'm president of the EAUC, and I have been for some period of time. And the EAUC is a little bit different than a lot of organizations whereby we do not rotate the president on an annual basis. The reason for that is because of the need for consistency of a message and to have kind of a familiar spokesperson, if you will, from the association, talking about the EDA University Center nationwide and the economic impact and those types of things. With the legislature, both the House and the Senate side, certainly with some of the sister agencies, because we are kind of the voice for the EDA University Center and the work that it does around the country year after year. The association is a membership association, and generally we have somewhere between 50, 70. We've had as many as 100 members over the year. We'd like to get up to that number again. We didn't have a spring conference this past year because we transitioned the association from the East Coast. Tom McClure from Western Carolina University was the executive director for many years, a couple decades. Dan has thankfully taken that role. They're on the West Coast, so thank you, Dan, and you're doing a great job. We did, and we have in the past occasionally waived the membership dues, the annual dues, particularly when we have built up a little bit of a surplus, a little bit of a buffer in our account where we don't feel we need to have the members contribute again for a year or so, and over the past year or so we have not sent out invoices for the membership dues, but we will be doing that again, so look for that within a matter of weeks or so. We try to keep the membership dues very reasonable. We're right around, I think, $350 for the membership dues. The conference is a little bit in addition to that, but we try to keep that very, very reasonable, really just to cover our costs there. So we want to keep it affordable, and we're going to work hard to do that. One of the roles that's very important that the association plays is communication about the program and about our individual programs with the appropriators, with the legislature, both the House members and the members of the Senate. And one way that's very important to do that is back in the states and in the regions that you serve. So especially with key staffers, with the House districts and the district directors and their staff, so they know what the programs and projects that you're conducting are, and then also with the Senate offices. And one way that you can do that is to make sure that they know that they're welcome to make a site visit, maybe issue an invitation to a member to come to a company if you're providing technical assistance, to a community if you're doing some community development work or responding to a natural disaster or some of the other programs that EDA has. So it's important that legislatures and their staff know what the activities are and how the program is working within their districts and within the state. So when it comes time to discuss authorization and or appropriation, they're aware of what's going on. And to that end also, we're going to be in the process of putting together and updating what I would call case history abstracts. These are stories, if you will, about programs and the projects and some of the things that you've accomplished and what the outcomes and deliverables and who you served, and maybe some testimonials, maybe a photo that would be helpful. Pretty much a one-pager, but something that can be used by the individual EDA university centers, and probably something that we'll be compiling to give kind of a representative sample of what the program's been doing over the past year or so nationwide. Again, it's really important that we communicate what we do, because otherwise we're kind of operating in a vacuum, and that's not optimal. So be looking for those templates to come out and put your best forward, your best foot, your best story forward, and we'll be collecting that. We are doing the planning for the annual conference. We've been holding these conferences for probably as long as the association's been in existence, 20 years or more, in Washington, in March, usually in early March, because that's the time when the president's budget is presented to Congress, and when Congress starts to take up the appropriations process for the upcoming fiscal year. And we think it's important to be there and to be able to do two things. Number one, if possible, get up to the Hill and talk to some of the staffers, and if you're fortunate, a member of Congress or the Senate. And then second of all, to invite people from the Hill, chiefs of staff, key committee staffers, and principal individuals from federal agencies. So some of the agencies that we typically invite are NIST, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, the Department of Labor, and others, with an opportunity to hear what they're doing, what some of the collaboration opportunities are, and that gives our members a chance to go one-on-one and actually ask questions and learn a little bit more about what other agencies are doing. Obviously, we have somebody, at least one or two people coming in from EDA, and often that's the Assistant Secretary for Economic Development. So we'll certainly try to make that a priority for the upcoming conference. So stay tuned on that. And I'm glad you're all with us. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on now to Bernadette. So Bernadette, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Larry. Hi, everyone. As you said, my name is Bernadette Grafton. I am the University Center Program Coordinator with EDA, and I've talked to many of you before, so hopefully this is a nice kind of welcome back. to this webinar. We're excited to be hosting these every other month, and just looking forward to having the opportunity to touch base with you all on a regular basis, and just to share regular updates with you. Today, I really just want to focus on some of the key priorities that EDA has that you all should consider in your programs whenever possible. We've had some pretty stable investment priorities over the years. You all know that EDA's bread and butter is often our public works and critical infrastructure, and just working with exports and FDI and manufacturing, workforce, and all of that. But some two new ones that are pretty heavy right now for us are opportunity zones, which is just a hot button topic, and recovery and resilience. And this is natural disasters as well as economic disasters. But right now, EDA has entered into its second year of receiving a lot of extra funding from disaster supplemental money to support communities that are facing the impacts of natural disasters. And so we really want you to be aware of that. If there's any way that you can consider this in the work you're doing, or if you're aware of opportunities in your communities that you're serving to kind of hop on board this train, just want you all to be aware of these investment priorities, and just in all of your communications, if you are doing anything to help communities that are facing the impacts of natural disaster, or if you're working in communities that have opportunity zones, to just be communicating that in your materials and in your messaging. That's really important to tie into. And just some of our, just a regular update on funding opportunities. We have rolling applications that we're accepting for Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, as well as the short-term planning and local technical assistance. Those are everything that we have available is on grants.gov. But these are just rolling until there's a new notice of funding opportunity posted, and all of that is available on our website. The Regional Innovation Strategies Program, they expect to announce competitions or opportunities for FY20 pending appropriations. So stay tuned for that. Again, always on our website and social media, so be following that. I know many of you are most likely familiar with the RISC program, given that you're university centers, so I'm guessing you're eager for that one to come out. The 2019 Disaster Supplemental, this is new. This is covering communities that have been impacted by natural disasters in 2018 and floods and tornadoes in 2019. So take a look at that if it's relevant, or if you know somebody or know a community that could benefit from that. And then the University Center program, our next funding cycle isn't until FY 2021, and that'll be for the Chicago and Philly regions. So we'll be talking about that more in the coming year, just to gear up for that. It doesn't hurt to be preparing for the next funding cycle, even if it's not coming for a couple of years. So just keep that on your radar. And then lastly, I want to make sure everybody's aware of a fantastic tool with free data resources available to you on statsamerica.org. We, as EDA, rely on this resource, and we are hoping that all of our stakeholders will as well. Stats America is just a fantastic resource for you in terms of figuring out what the characteristics of your community are, and even looking at innovation and distress. There's always new tools being developed. In fact, we're working on a resilience tool right now, and hoping that that will be available in the near term. There's new tools that we're always working on. I know I've been pounding the SEDS resource library to our economic development districts, and that could actually be beneficial for our university centers as well. So just take a look at all of that. If you have any questions, ask one of your EDA reps. We're all looking for feedback on how we can improve the resources that we're providing. So take a look at that. And I've reached out to, I think, all of our university centers at this point, looking for updates for our website, constantly trying to improve and update the information that we have available to you on the University Center webpage. And right now, my next step is actually to make sure that the PDFs are updated. So take a look at our website, and if you have a PDF up there for your university center that is outdated, say from 2012 or 2013, feel free to shoot me an email. It's bgrafton1@eda.gov, and I can work with you to get that updated. I really want to make sure that all of your current information is available to anyone who visits our website. So that's the next step for that. And actually just want to turn it over to Sally Whaley right now. She's in our Austin regional office, and she made me aware of a fantastic resource that I want to make sure that the rest of the university centers know about. So Sally, are you able to talk?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes. Thank you.
Great. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks, Bernadette. Yeah, and this is a resource that is that one of our grantees down in the Austin Regional Office is providing. Although they serve regions nationwide, they're essentially a virtual incubator for minority and women-owned businesses, and they're great because they're filling the gap between really lucrative technology-driven startups by covering just kind of local small startups that people who just want to own their own business or get into business can work on. And so they have recently launched a platform that is available to everyone, even folks who are not directly their clients, called Galaxy of Stars. And it is an online network for minority and women-owned businesses, providing free websites and free hosting. They have a partnership with a web hosting, and they're paying for as many websites as they can help folks get up. So they don't even make folks put in a credit card. They have free message boards and forums about different topics for the startup community, and other different educational content for entrepreneurs. And then they also are launching a directory of minority and women-owned businesses. So for folks who, maybe don't fit into the category of one of those, but are interested in supporting that sector of our economy, they're hoping to get as many people onto their directory as possible, so that people who want to support women, minority-owned businesses can go onto that website and find, who in their local community represents that population when they're purchasing things. So I know a lot of y'all operate startup services or business entrepreneurial services in y'all's community. So I wanted to make this available to you guys, make you guys aware of it, so that folks that you work with can get on board with this as well, and just trying to share as many, to cross-pollinate as many EDA grantees as possible. So yeah, it looks like the website link is there. So thanks again, Bernadette.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sally. I really appreciate that. And actually, that's just a really great point. If anyone has any resources that that you think could benefit or that might be of interest to other university centers, please let me know. We can always make a point of providing those and making sure that those are distributed throughout the network. But right now, I want to turn it over to Roberto. He is with Purdue University, and he's going to be delivering a presentation today, just going over the activities that they're conducting within their University Center program, and also how they have been collaborating with an economic development district. This is something that we've been realizing is happening across the country, and we want to emphasize as a best practice. When university centers and economic development districts are working closely together and providing resources and an extra capacity for each other, there's really greater outcomes from that. So I really just wanted to highlight this as an example, and would love to hear more from all of you, how you have been working with your economic development districts and vice versa. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Roberto.
Thank you, Bernadette. Let me see.
You should have control.
Okay, I don't see. Okay,
Oh, there you
there
go.
we go. So yeah, thank you again so much for the opportunity. I'm going to go through a couple of examples of what we're doing with EDDs. We are a joint center, university center with Ball State here in Indiana as well. So a shout out to them as well. as you all know, digital inclusion is becoming more and more, it's surfacing more on more conversations in regional economic development, local economic development, whatever it is. Digital inclusion with its kind of broadband connectivity component, I think it's one of the important things to keep in mind. The research is pretty clear on broadband. There are still a couple things up in the air, but we do know through research, oh, sorry, I don't know why that went, okay, that, you know, broadband does matter for a whole host of social and economic outcomes: household income, employment levels, firm attraction, farm profits, increasing housing values. Those are things that are documented in the research. And the theme that emerges is that adoption is arguably more important than simple availability. We see in our research time and time again that the biggest bang for the buck is with adoption, not necessarily availability, though there are areas that are really struggling to have just decent connectivity. The role that very fast speeds play is still up in debate right now. There's some research that says yes, other research that says no, but that's kind of just a heads up that that's a research that is taking place right now. And with this kind of a background of that, the research is pretty clear. Let me share with you the, digital inclusion. Many times many communities focus on infrastructure only, but digital inclusion refers to the meaningful use for social and economic benefits. That one has this definition, which is broader, has a tremendous implication for economic development. So what does digital inclusion mean? We have the National Digital Inclusion Alliance has 5 dimensions. You can read them there yourselves, but unfortunately, many times in rural communities especially, or even suburban areas, we get stuck on number 1. And we overlook the other 4 dimensions that are very, very important to truly achieve digital inclusion, because digital exclusion, I believe, is the number 1 threat to community and economic development this century. So based on that, I'm gonna share with you what we're doing here at PCRD with Ball State and other partners here with EDDs on trying to kind of move the needle, increase awareness on digital inclusion, and kind of try and hit. We're really kind of focusing on 1 and 2, maybe, and 3, and you're going to see the resources and the programs I'm glad to share with you today. So first and foremost, we have developed 4 state of broadband reports, which are regional in nature. These reports are very comprehensive. You know, they're 30, 40 pages long. And what it does is it provides an overview of the state of broadband in that particular region. We discuss broadband deployment models. We get that question a lot on, okay, what's the best way to deploy this? Many communities know that it may end up requiring a public-private model. So we discuss that. We identify 25.3 providers. 25.3 is the current broadband definition, which is 25 megabits per second down and 3 megabits per second up. That's how the FCC defines broadband based on this speed threshold. We also map that footprint. I'm going to share with you a couple of maps shortly. We also look at population, household, and business broadband gaps, so where they are inside or outside of that footprint. We also developed a metric called digital distress. That's very, very useful for EDDs to kind of identify quickly which areas are under digital distress for using a particular definition that I'm going to share with you shortly. We look at homework gap. I'm sure some of you have heard about that. The homework gap refers to the issue that students have access to internet and devices at school, but then when they get home, they don't. And so there's this gap that needs to be bridged. We also discuss some digital economy trends. We use a research from the Bureau of Economic Analyses to kind of look at what's going on with the digital economy in your region. And lately, this last report that was in April, we look at digital inclusiveness, a household survey that I'm going to discuss with you shortly. So these reports, we've conducted 4 of them, and each one has resulted in different things. I'm going to highlight 2 regions that we have worked with on some of these issues. Here's an example of the homework gap that is in one of these reports. The gray areas in this particular Southeastern Indiana, which is an EDD area, the gray area is the 25.3 broadband footprint, and then The pink rose area or rosy area is where households with, there's above average homes with children. Homes children in homes is the #1 predictor of broadband adoption. And so that's something to keep in mind, but it also illustrates that some of these areas may have homes with children that are outside of the 25/3 footprint. So that kind of jumpstarts critical conversations around this topic. The digital distress that I was mentioning to you earlier, this one looks at another component, which is those homes that either do not subscribe or don't have internet access, they don't have computing devices, or they only rely on mobile devices, or they only subscribe through cellular data only. These are components that are shown in the literature that affect the ability of a home to leverage the potential of the internet, especially for workforce development, education, and other issues. So this is an example of another map. Those areas in kind of pink or light red are the ones that are in digital distress in this particular region, Southeastern Indiana. And this is one we just incorporated in the latest report. It's not available in the first 3. It's a household survey that looks at 3 components. This one we're trying to fully gauge the digital inclusion concept. And so we have a resourcefulness and utilization, device and internet access, and we have the actual internet benefits of using that technology. Again, this is a home survey. We did one for Southeastern Indiana, and it's very, very useful. I'm going to share with you one of the few results that we had with this survey. The EDD played a tremendous role in getting the survey out. It is not scientific. It is a convenient sample in a way, but the sample is weighted by specific socioeconomics for the region to make it as close as align it as close as possible to the census distribution. So this, for example, we use the UN ITU framework on digital skills, if they are advanced, intermediate, or basic. And here you can see the responses from this area. We identified 25 internet applications, and you can see here that's the percent of homes that responded using the internet for those things at least once monthly. You can see that browsing the web, for example, everybody's using it, but that requires basic digital skills. As you go down the graph, you will see there's then intermediate and then there's advanced. We're hoping that the region comes up with a plan to then hit on increase those uses that require more advanced skills. And so that's something that remains to be seen because this is something very telling. All those 4 measures of digital inclusiveness I've shared with you were normalized to a range of 0 to 10, where 10 is the best. And here you have the results for that particular region. And device and internet access, they scored a 6. Resourcefulness and utilization, they scored a 4. And the internet benefits, they scored a 1.4. That was shocking. I thought that was going to be higher. And then the overall digital inclusiveness metric is 4.1. So this, I discussed this with the EDD. This is a lot of opportunity, right? The device and internet access has been tackled for a long time. That is why, even though the region struggles in certain areas, it got the highest score. The resourcefulness and utilization has a lot of room to grow, and not to mention the internet benefits, right? So they are not truly leveraging the technology. So this, in turn, jumpstart a lot of important economic development conversations for the region, such as, because of this report, the EDD ended up forming a regional digital inclusion task force. A couple months later, and the electric co-op said they were interested in offering broadband, so they took that as their #1 priority to get the survey out there so folks could answer and make sure that the co-op had the number of responses they needed. They are in the process of mapping free Wi-Fi hotspots in the region. They are inventorying facilities that are conducive to hosting digital literacy workshops. They're gonna set up a couple of workshops in the near future. They have preliminary conversations with businesses to recycle their computers and devices to then turn around and set up a device loan program in partnership with libraries. This hits at the device issue of digital inclusion. And PCRD, in partnership with Purdue Extension, trained the local chamber director on offering digital-ready business programs, which targets rural entrepreneurs and small business owners. And they are also in the planning phase of digital skills program for veterans in partnership with the veterans group down there. So this happened within 3 months. So you can tell they hit the ground running, which is phenomenal. But the key thing is that through this process, they became aware of digital inclusion when otherwise I believe it would have been under their radar. Another program that we offer, this one was in partnership with another regional planning commission, is what's called the Intelligent Community Program. This one practically talks about gauging your community and using these 6 indicators, 4 of which are very familiar for economic developers, but 2 of them are really focused on the digital age, broadband and digital equity. When you look at all 6, you do get a different understanding of your community. So we developed this program, which is in the pilot phase, which consists of these phases: increase awareness, form a task force, conduct a checklist, right? Using those indicators, see where you are. It's practically asset mapping. Then you execute and document. And then if you need to, you get recognition from the Intelligent Community Forum, which is a worldwide think tank that works with communities around the world. So the results of using this program are still unfolding, but we've completed 9 presentations about what the digital age is, what are the economic development implications, completed 3 intelligent community checklist reports and action plans. Because of this, we developed a program called iFront Door, which really is in partnership with Lamb School of Communication here on campus, and they go and assess the online reputation of the communities. And it was very successful. The students were thrilled to participate in it. We're running it again for a second time this year. We're excited about it, but all this falls under this intelligent community kind of framework or umbrella. I'm advising a specific Rush County, which is within this region, on a broadband task force. We completed a county data validation and demand aggregation survey where we found that more than half of those that responded, of 500 responses, more than half were unsatisfied with their broadband service. The median speeds were very, very, very bad. So we're working with them in the state to see if they can get some money. And we secured more than $10,000 for a regional robotics program that, again, it all aligns under this umbrella of an intelligent community. So these are just a couple of examples of what we're doing as a university, EDA University Center, to number 1, increase awareness of digital inclusion, but to kind of put some, kind of hit the ground running on some things that we're hoping can move the needle and make these regions really adapt and prosper in this digital age. So there, I'm right on time, I think. So there, back to you, Bernadette.
Thank you so much, Roberto. That was a fantastic presentation. You're doing some pretty amazing things. I actually have a question that came in, so I will read it off. I figured we might as well get the question started. There's a question about if it's possible to get a copy of the survey that you had discussed. One of our university centers is working with 2 tribal governments and an EDD in Northeastern Wisconsin on the same issue, and would love to kind of hear more about that survey.
Sure, I'll be more than happy. I'm guessing they're referring to the Digital Inclusiveness Survey. I can share that. I'll be glad to. I also mentioned another survey, which is the data validation, demand aggregation. Those are 2 different kind of surveys, but I can share both if they're interested, and I can share the reports. I just didn't have time right now, right, to discuss. But the reports are fascinating because it's jump-starting an additional conversations around this. But yes, I'll be happy to share this with you.
Great, thank you. Another question came in. How did you organize the execution of the study?
Of the state of broadband, practically we heard from the EDD saying, we're interested. This started with other funding, and they were looking into broadband, and so we came up with the first template. The first version is very nice, but it's the most primitive one. It has been evolving based on the feedback. Then word of mouth spread among the EDDs and the regions, and then they're like, we want a report just like that one, but we added something different and something. And the latest version is the one, I think it's the most robust, is the one that includes that digital inclusiveness survey with the EDD in Southeastern Indiana. So it was basically they coming to us on broadband infrastructure. We came back with the report, which was more robust than infrastructure itself. And that apparently was very popular. And so that's where we are now. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but.
So there's no more questions that have come in yet. I'm sure folks are kind of thinking and trying to digest everything. I did share a link to produce your resource page that has a list of all the publications and reports.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make sure everyone had that available. So that was shared in the chat box if folks are interested.
Great. I'm going to go back and mute myself. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any
All
other
right.
questions?
Nothing yet.
All right.
No more questions.
You did too good a job of covering everything. But Roberto, I know you're going to get a lot of emails and calls because I can tell a lot of other people, including myself, are interested in how we can implement something like that. We've done a ton of broadband studies, but most of it's been on, frankly, where the broadband exists and not
Yes.
the adoption. We've done it to death on where the dark fiber lies and how much
Yes.
it costs and who wants it. But
Yeah.
understanding how it's being adopted, I think, is a really, really interesting way to look at it. So
Thank you. And in fact, if we're gonna boast about an immediate output of this is to increase awareness on the other side of digital inclusion, which is connectivity, devices, and skills. Those are the three kind of big areas of inclusion. And so, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, I'll be happy to help in any way we can. We've got a lot going on, and we continue to develop technical assistance programs or full-blown extension programs that kind of fall under the purview of this digital inclusion concept.
okay, great. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in.
Oh, there's one more question. What is the best data source for adoption rates and the accuracy of that data?
Ha! I knew that question was going to come up. Unfortunately, there are no, national data sets. This has to be done at the local, regional level. The ACS just came out with some metrics that kind of are proxies to this, which includes the do you subscribe to the internet or do you have internet access? Though the data doesn't tell us why not, or why yes, they have access. The Pew does a lot of studies, the current population survey, but those are national samples, right? And so you can't kind of get them to that regional level to spearhead these conversations. So at this point in time, it's primary data really that you've got to go out there. But here's the kicker though, with the Southeastern EDD, they sent that survey out through schools, churches, Lidos, chambers of commerce. It's really not that expensive to do. If you have the instrument and you can send it out through all the channels and listservs that you can get a hold of, I think that it's not that hard to get the data if you make it a priority. But no, there's no national data set that tells us about adoption.
Right.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions yet. Well, maybe we can just go into some of these reminders. If any other questions come in, we can handle that then.
I think there's yeah. Will broadband adoption be on the 2020 census? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe I need to double check. It is on the ACS and it just came out in the latest version of it. But about adoption, there's no agreed upon what applications you need to list. We shrunk it to 25 just because of our, experience and so forth. But you can imagine this is and also digital skills, that's sorely needed as well. I don't think it's going to be in the census, but I will double check, Ethan.
Okay. For those who are curious, and I know we've had the question in the past, we are recording this and we will make a copy of the webinar available in about 2 weeks. It takes just a little bit of time for us to cut it down and condense it. I know I'll be using a copy of it, Roberto, because I know I've got regional partners here in California who do a lot of broadband work, and I'd love them to see what you're doing out there. So Real quick reminder, this coming week, late Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, over in Reno, there's the National University Economic Development Association, which is having their national conference. We will be having a brief meeting on Sunday at noon Pacific time there in Reno at the conference facility. I will be sending out a notice to let everyone know where that is. We are also attempting to set up a broadband audio connection so that you can listen in. We're trying to work on logistics for that. But for the first 10 people that show up, you will get a box lunch. So be the first 10 people to register. Larry mentioned it earlier. I mentioned as well, the Educational Association of University Centers has a great spring meeting. Larry's pulls together a wonderful group of speakers from across Washington, D.C., as well as we do partner with a lot of other organizations that we've worked with in the past, including the National Association of Development Organizations, IEDC, and quite a few others. And so be looking for more information about that at our, at least by the time of our next webinar. Speaking of which, the next webinar date we've selected is Wednesday, November 20th, which is the week prior to Thanksgiving. Normally we try to hold this on the last Wednesday, but having this the day before Thanksgiving kind of seemed like it wrecked a little bit of Thanksgiving spirit. So do we have any other questions, Roberta? Bernadette?
Nope, no more questions.
Okay. All right. Oh, there was a question I didn't know, is in terms of one of the things we're working on with the EAUC and EDA is the idea of having these webinars, is the idea of creating somewhat of a national community of the university centers. There's a variety of ways to do it. One way is through these sorts of every other month dialogues. The other is we are, again, holding at least twice a year meetings. The other is, to the degree that we can, supporting regional meetings of university centers. I know, Larry, you've talked about it in the past, how there have been meetings of EDA university centers, sometimes by EDA districts. Did you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, yes, the regions do have, I know the Chicago Regional Office has a showcase. I know they met recently in Indianapolis, where they invited people in and shared some of the programs and projects. So I think that does take place on kind of a region by region basis. In the past, I think a couple regions have maybe gotten together. I think the Philadelphia and Chicago region got together at one point and found a midpoint where geographically we could get together. Obviously, UEDA is a forum. The difference between the Educational Association of University Centers and maybe some of the others is we remain in DC. We don't move around the country. We stay in DC because we think the message is important to the stakeholders in Washington, the legislature, other federal agencies, what have you. And then it also allows us to attract a fairly high level group of speakers, as I mentioned before, where you wouldn't have the opportunity. They aren't going to travel out there in the hinterland, so to speak. With travel budgets and what have you, you might get an occasional speaker once in a while, but to get 10 or 12 or even more, including panels from federal agencies and from the Hill, you almost, the thing about DC is if you're out of sight, sometimes you're out of mind. And there's another saying that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we want to be at the table. That allows us to be at the table and invite people into our table to participate in discussions. So.
The other thing that we really want to focus on is frankly best practices in just communicating with the folks that make funding decisions. So I know running an EDA University Center for 30 years, I invested 100% of my funding in programming. I didn't invest a ton of my resources into developing fancy materials. to communicate with the general public and elected officials. And so to the degree that we can, we really want to focus on developing best practices in communications, using things like hashtag US_US EDA. So to post your message to Twitter, anything we can do to get the message out about the great successes and the great programs like the one that we heard from Roberto today, I think is important. For those that don't get out there onto Twitter, Bernadette's done a great job of posting information out there. It's a great way to learn about best practices, but we really want to expand in that communication. Moreover, we really want to make sure that regional staff across the country, the ones that vote on programs funding, subscribe to those Twitter feeds so that they can see exactly what we are doing and the great work, and making sure that we invite them to our open houses and that sort of thing. So anything else before we close out for the day?
I see one more.
Yeah, we've got a question about EAUC membership. Specifically, is membership for each EAUC, or is it per university center personnel or staff person?
Yeah, this is Larry, and I'll answer that. With the membership for the particular EDA University Center, so the University Center becomes the member. There's in addition to the principal member, there's also, I believe it's 2 additional members that can be added at no cost on the membership. When it comes to the actual conference, well, there's obviously a cost for each participant. And can membership fees be paid from the EDA University Center funds? Not from federal funds, but from other sources of funding that are non-federal sources. If permissible, then those funds can be used.
I can comment on that as well. In regards to EDA University Center funds, it's not strictly prohibited. It's more of a matter of, is it necessary, reasonable, and allowable? So that's something that we can talk through. We might be able to come up with some kind of parameters around that. And that's something that you would have to factor into your budgets as well. And I know budgets are tight, especially with university center funding being very limited. So, in more recent news, it's not strictly prohibited, but it's not a flat yes either. So, we might be able to discuss that more, but there's nothing wrong with paying for membership dues outright. It just depends on the activities and all of that.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
For clarifying that. I wanted to tread lightly on it, but thanks for qualifying it a little bit.
All right.
Yep.
And real quick, there was a question about, again, that Twitter. It was at US_EDA. Again, at US_EDA. So if you have projects, Bernadette, are you recommending that people tag EDA when they have, for example, press releases that go out?
Absolutely.
Posting.
Yeah, if you're posting anything to social media that's an activity that came out of your university center, please tag EDA in that. EDA is on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of that, and our accounts are all on our website. So if you need a reminder, just go to our website and you'll see all of that there. But yeah, if we're tagged in something or linked in something, we will repost, which can kind of share that message even further. So think about that.
Yep. No, it's a great way to get the message out. It's a great way to have the folks in the DC office know exactly what's going on in the field as well. So, All right. Well, I don't see any other questions coming up. I guess we can wrap for the day. Oh, wait. Did I misspeak? I misspoke.
There was
question for Roberto.
Is there any collaboration with Dr. Bob Balance's work on broadband connectivity assessment tools? I believe it's prototype data driven.
Yes, I've been in touch with Bob on his i3 platform, I think it's called. I can't remember the URL. Yes, he pulls data as well, and that's also good. That's a resource I use with the EDDs that I work with. But it's just it provides the access part. I think he will include the digital distress shortly and others. So yes, we're in touch.
Okay.
One last thing. As of last Wednesday, we did relaunch the EAUC website. So it is out there. It's at eauc.org. Again, eauc.org. There's not a lot of content there. We're in the process of uploading a lot of documents and reports from the past. But one of the things that we'll be doing is reaching out to you to collect cases and best practices, as well as working collaboratively with all of you to identify some best practices that we can maybe share across the country. So look for more information about that probably by the next month's webinar, or excuse me, in 2 months. And as I was speaking, another question came in. So the question is, will there be an EAUC conference this year? The conference will be held in the spring. So we're looking at late March, early April. Is that correct, Larry?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're looking at what's the best window and again, we try to partner up with either NATO or IEDC or someone else who might be holding an economic development conference so that we can have you get double bang for the travel buck if you're traveling all the way from the West Coast or Alaska or Hawaii. So I know it's a long reach for some, so we try to make them back-to-back events. So great.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. We'll give you back 6 minutes in your day.
All right. Happy Thursday. Take care.
Bye.